Hi, welcome back to the Therapy by Craft channel. My name is Eunice Kim. I am the maker and your host behind Therapy by Craft. And today we're going to talk about designers. All right, so you guys seem to really like the knitting patterns that I can vouch for video, which is amazing. I'm so pleased because what that tells me is that you guys are interested in the things that I'm interested in. So that's always a good feeling, right? So today I thought I would talk about something that doesn't really get talked about much, which is the makers behind the patterns. Is that right? The designers behind the patterns. A lot of times we talk about garments, we talk about the actual finished item, but we don't talk about the pattern writing that happens or the process of having somebody's brilliant idea for a design getting transferred onto written form so that the consumer can read that and make it themselves. So today I wanted to share with you my favorite designers. And even though I haven't made everything from their designs, I trust them enough that I could recommend their patterns to you. Before we get started, I want to give you the rules that I use to selecting my designers. So the first rule is that I needed to have made at least 2 of their patterns and actually wear them or use them. The second rule is that they need to have a wide range of sizes available. Now, this was important to me because I didn't want to recommend a designer to you only to have you not be able to use any of their designs because it doesn't fit your body type. So there's only one exception to this rule, but I really think that it's forgivable. So we'll get to that in a minute. And then the last rule or the last thing that I wanted to make sure about these patterns or these pattern writers, designers, is that their patterns were visually appealing and not in the sense of like, oh, it's pretty to look at, but that it's easy to consume as a reader. So side note about me, I would consider myself to be an intermediate to advanced knitter. I've been knitting for a very long time. I also am a visual and kinetic learner, which means that I am the person who wants to see a pattern be as short as possible and as condensed as possible. And I don't need a lot of charts and graphs. I mean, unless it's, like color work or lace work, then I do definitely appreciate a chart. But I don't like a lot of words on a page. If the instructions themselves can be less than or around 5 pages, that's awesome. I have tested for and I have purchased patterns that are very, 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 very lengthy. And it very much overwhelms me. I can't take in all of that information very well. So it's helpful for me when the pattern is simply written, it's clean to look at, and it's easy to follow in that way. I don't know every knitting skill there is to know out there, but I'm the person that's going to take that skill. And if I don't know what a knit two together is, for example, then I will go on YouTube and I will look it up and I will look for tutorials on how to do a knit two together. I would much rather do that. I learn much better that way to see it in a video than to actually have it all written down in a pattern. So that's my preference. That's how I learn. And I think you'll see that the designers I promote in this video today kind of reflect that. For those of you who are like me, Very Pink Knits is an amazing teacher. She has an entire channel on YouTube. I will link her channel to here so that you can take a look. She has amazing slow-mo videos that I look at all the time. Anyway, okay. Those are the 3 rules. Number 1, that I made at least 2 of their patterns. Number 2, that they offer a wide range of sizes. And number 3, that the patterns are easy to follow, that they are simple to look at, they are clean, and it's not going to overwhelm you visually. Now, spoiler alert, Petite Knit is on this list. I know. I think she is someone that we all hate to love. Does that make sense? Like, we all love her because her patterns are so classy and they're great and they're everyday staples, but we hate that we love her so much. What's the deal with that? I don't know. I think maybe because she's so successful, like we want to spread that success around. I don't know, maybe that's what it is. Yeah. Like, she's so successful, we wish that we could give that success to some other folks, which I will do today, because before I talk about Petite Knit, I'm going to be talking about a bunch of other designers. How many do I have here? I'm going to talk about 6 in total, and Petite Knit is going to be the very last one. And I'll save her for the end because, you know, she's talked about a lot. And also because I'm going to do a more thorough review of her pattern writing. There are things that I very much love about her designs, but there are also things that I'm like, I don't love that. So I'll share all of those juicy details at the end. So something I need to note, because of my rules, you'll notice that there are some designers here that are very famous and are very great. They have a lot of patterns out there and I know are like fan favorites that I don't mention on this list. For example, Andrea Mowry, Hoi Locatelli. I know that these are wonderful designers, but they're not going to be on this list because I just simply haven't made enough of their things to really vouch for them. Now, just because I don't put them on this list doesn't mean that I don't respect them. But okay, with that said, let's go ahead and get started. The 5 designers that I really want to promote to you today, as well as a more thorough review of Petite Knit at the end. All right. The first designer I want to talk about is the designer who is the exception to the size inclusivity thing. And that is Hannah of Hannah J Knits. The reason why I forgive her is because she is a children's knitwear designer. And by nature of her being a children's knitwear designer, her patterns don't include adult sizes, me included, which makes me really sad because I think her designs are so beautiful. I've tested for her, but I've also purchased her patterns as well. I've made her Micah satchel, which is this adorable little side bag for your little ones, as well as Ollie's classic crew and the vest version of her fluffiest set. And I gotta tell you, I don't know, there's a soft spot in my heart for Hannah, and I have to give a little bit of background. When I was pregnant with my daughter, I looked high and low for children's knits because I was super excited to be able to knit my little one their very own like knit wardrobe. But the patterns out there there's much to be desired in children's knitwear. Yeah. It seems like it's very, I don't know, oversimplified. Everything seems to be either very boxy where there's zero to no shape, or it's very like lacy and floofy and things that you would put on a doll rather than a human being. And so Hannah, I believe, started designing around the time that I was actively knitting things for my daughter. And I must have imprinted on her because her designs are so thoughtfully made. And I have to say, like, I'm struggling a little bit, but I think the best way that I can describe the way that she designs her children's knits is that you can tell she likes kids. You can tell that she honors the kids and children as their own people in their own right, and that she very much loves her son, who is the inspiration behind a lot of her designs, you know, as she shared in her own podcast. And you can tell that she wants her son to be comfortable, that she wants the kids who are wearing her designs to be able to feel good in their clothes and to be proud of the clothes that their grown-up made for them. And it totally shines through. Yeah, I appreciate it so much. I've tested for her, so I tested the Micah satchel as well as the Ollie's Classic Crew. Those are the two tests that I did for her, and then I purchased like a bunch of other patterns, including the fluffiest set, because after testing for her, it was very evident that she cares very much for the patterns that she writes and for the people that the patterns are intended for. I'll give you a good example. In the fluffiest set, if you purchase that pattern, you get a vest version as well as a cardigan version. In the cardigan version, you have short rows in the sleeves so that it'll be comfortable for your kids to wear and so that they don't have all this like extra fabric bunched up underneath their armpits. Isn't that so thoughtful? I mean, I think a lot of designs that I've seen out there would just sort of forego that, and I really appreciate that she doesn't do that. Now, what is her size range? I think she goes all the way from newborn to 10 to 12 years old, something like that. So she does cover a wide range of sizes, and I gotta say, you guys, grading for children is really difficult. And so even though I wish there were adult sizes in the designs that Hannah's made, I can't fault her for it. And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. Even to have children's knitwear designs, it's a lot of work. And I think that the need is more in the children's knitwear than it is in the adult garment arena. So anyway, check Hannah out. She has, let me see here, 13 designs that are available for purchase on Ravelry. It is, oh, her patterns themselves, if you purchase them, you'll notice that hers are in a landscape format, which is perfect for me because I usually use my iPad to look at all of my patterns. What I'll do is I'll, tuck it like this, and I look at it this way where, it's this way. So it's easy to read her patterns when I'm on my iPad. They're simple. They're not super duper lengthy, which I appreciate. She sections out each step of the construction of either the garment or the accessory, and so it's very clear conceptually what it is that you're doing next. She also doesn't give out a bunch of explanations for how to do X, Y, or Z, but if there are special techniques that are involved, she does support in that as well. I think that her patterns are visually appealing. It is, it doesn't overwhelm me when I sit down to work them up. So the designer is a sweetheart. Her patterns are well written. The designs are classy and something that I think are timeless. They're timeless designs, and they're made for every child. There's no gender assigned to any of her designs. When my daughter wears her Ollie's Classic Crew out and about, people always comment on it and they're like, oh my gosh, that is the cutest thing. And it's true, it is. That's the one I wish I could have as an adult garment, but that's okay. Yeah, Hannah's a good one. I really would highly, highly recommend her. Okay, next is Aimee Sher. She's another pattern designer that I have tested for. I tested her and puff sleeves top, but I also purchased her coloring book raglan. And yeah, they are an amazing designer in that when you're working through their patterns, you can absolutely tell that she also sews. I don't know how else to describe it. Let me back up a bit. Aimee has 26 designs in her Ravelry store, and they range from about $6 to about $10.50 or so. Her patterns are in oriented in portrait mode, and they are double columned. So even if you are looking at it in a mobile device, it's easy to zoom and do all that stuff. Aimee is very conscientious of the accessibility of her patterns, not just in terms of finances. I think I had mentioned previously that she has financial aid if you need it, but also visually. She offers her patterns in a normal PDF format. I don't want to say normal, but just like, a standard PDF format. And then she also provides for those who need more visual aid. So it's zoomed in quite a bit so that if you have a difficult time or if you have a hard time reading, then she offers a different version of the pattern for those who have low visibility. And I think that's just a really beautiful and amazing thing that they do. Also, I said earlier that you can tell that Aimee sews. And the reason for this is because when I tested her Anne's puff sleeves top, there is a pleated sleeve in there, and the way that she describes it in the pattern, the way that she instructs the maker to go about constructing this garment, it's very reminiscent for me of back when I was in high school taking like fashion design classes. It's clear, it is conceptually palatable. She definitely navigates you through each step, and she gives you a heads up like, hey, make sure you add a marker here, or make sure that you do this because we're going to come back to it later. It's very clear that she wants to set you up for success. And that's what we want, right? That's what we want in our experience, in our journey through making a garment, is that we trust that the designer is for us, that they're not out to get us or anything like that. Not that designers are, but you know, there's a level of trust there with the designer, and Aimee's one of those who definitely is worth your trust. She has a new pattern out that she just released a couple days ago, I think. It's the Oolong tank. It has this beautiful like lace, it's a v-neck tank vest looking thing, but it has this beautiful lace panel that runs through the V down the front, and it just looks gorgeous. And this is an example where, no, I have not made the tank. I have not tested the pattern or anything like that, but because I have enough experience with the designer herself, I feel confident in recommending that pattern to you because I know that Aimee will do a great job in guiding you through that garment. Oh, something else to note is I think I forgot to mention that for both Hannah and for Aimee, they have tester polls. So if you are interested in maybe testing for them, then make sure that you sign up for their newsletter. Hannah has a newsletter out that she offers, I guess, like first dibs to test her patterns. Aimee has the same thing. She also has Ko-Fi and Patreon. So if you want to support her in that way, then please do. That could be a way to get into their tester poll. Next on my list is a really underrated designer, I think. Her name is Tanis Lavallee of Tanis Fiber Arts. She not only designs patterns, but she also is a dyer. She has a line of yarns that you can purchase from her. And she's so fun. She's this very colorful, stylish person. She has 3 beautiful kids. Her and her husband are a hoot. I think, you know, my favorite are when she like shares her like her makeup palette. I think she shares very openly her love affair with eyeshadows color. She like puts on her beautiful makeup and she like is glowing in the sun. But anywho, I'm, you know, getting sidetracked here. I have made of her patterns the Floodlight Tee as a sample knit for my local yarn store, Buku Yarns, and I've also made her Gartrell, I don't know how to say it, but Gartrell crew for myself, and they're really well written. I don't think that Tanis has a tester pool. I think I have reached out to her once to see if she does do testing, but I think she had said that she does not. But nevertheless, her patterns are very well written, and her size range goes from about 31 inches to 64 inches in bust circumference. And I also want to mention that she has children's patterns as well. So there's some patterns like the Gartrell crew that goes from children's sizes all the way to like, what is it? 64 inches, something like that. And that's amazing. I love when that happens because that means that I can make like a matchy something for me and my daughter. And that's always fun. She also has many photos. Like if you go on her Ravelry page, you'll see that, well, how many patterns is she? She has over 100 patterns listed on her Ravelry page, and they are for all sexes. I purchased one recently. I think it's the Iggy Peck sweater. I haven't made it, but she made it for her son and then for her husband, and then she has worn it as well. Like it just is really made for all body shapes and sizes, which I think is really great. Her patterns are also really interesting in that they vary in their construction quite a bit. So the Iggy Peck, like I mentioned, is constructed bottom up and the arms are steeked. So it's colorwork pattern and you steek the armholes and the neck holes, I think. So that's a skill that I have never done before, and I purchased it knowing that it's a technique that would be new for me, but it was still exciting. Like, I trust that she will let me know how to do that or guide me to a place where I can find out more information on how to do that. The Floodlight tee is constructed top down in a circular yoke, and she has two views, not written in the pattern, but she has a sample that is in the like mohair striped with like fingering, and then she has another sample that she made which is in colorful stripes, which is the one that I made, and it was so beautiful. And I loved it so much, in fact, and the pattern was so well written that I used that garment to do my first class at Buku Yarns. So I taught a knitting class where we all made the Floodlight tee, and it was a great pattern to learn how to do increases, to do circular yoke, to do applied I-cord, as well as like an I-cord finish. It was just a really enjoyable class, and I think everybody's tee turned out to be really great. And I think it's a testament to the pattern. If I ever teach a class, or whenever I teach a class, I want to make sure that the pattern is going to be smooth sailing, and Tanis definitely produces patterns like that. I also made the Gartrell Crew. That one is constructed flat, so all of those pieces are in panels, and it's also knit bottom up raglan, but everything is seamed together at the end, and it was great. It was the first time that I constructed a garment that way, and her math is impeccable. I think there was a couple of times where I wondered if her math was wrong, but it just turns out that I don't know how to count. Her work was perfect. It was great. The pattern was wonderful. She recently released another tee. I can picture it in my head, but I don't remember what it's called. It has these like cabling, like a cable raglan with cabling on the side, and it looked really good, and I want to make one. But yes, she's another one of those designers where when she releases a pattern, I feel comfortable recommending them, even though I've never made it, because I own enough of her patterns. I've taught one of her patterns, and I really think she's an underrated designer that really deserves a little bit more attention for her pattern designs. So her patterns are written, again, similar to Aimee, in a vertical like portrait orientation with 2 columns. I think that her older versions might be a single column, but the newer ones have 2 columns, so it's a little bit easier to view on a mobile device. There's a bit of pops of color here and there, but it is still very easy to read. Her font, I think that she uses a Century Gothic, which is not my favorite font, but it's still readable. She bolds things. She makes it catchy enough that I can follow through her patterns no problem. And if you are interested in checking it out, she does have some free patterns on her Ravelry page. So if you're curious about the designer, one of the patterns that I think is super cute from her free pattern options is the trench hat. It's a beanie with some scalloped color detail, and it looks really cute. And I opened it up, and it looks like, yeah, what you see in that pattern is very similar to what it's going to look like in a purchased, like a graded garment pattern. Most of her patterns are priced at like between $6 to $9. For accessories, it's a little bit cheaper, like $5 to $6, whereas the graded garments are closer to $9, $10. I am glad to see that, to be honest, because grading takes a lot of work. And like I said, some of her patterns include both children and adult sizes in one pattern. So absolutely, I think she deserves to charge a little bit more for that extra work that she does. But anyway, that's Tanis Fiber Arts, Tanis Lavallee. Please check her out if you haven't already. Yeah, very underrated pattern designer, I think. Okay, next is another newer designer. Maybe she's budding like in the last couple of years, but she's been doing amazing, is Tori Yu. She is a New York-based designer. She also does tester calls. So if you're interested in participating in a test of hers, follow her on Instagram. I tested her Brooklyn Raglan, which was delightful. And I also purchased the brownstone beanie after I tested for her because yeah, like, and there's a couple of patterns of hers that I've purchased myself because after testing for her, I was like, man, this girl knows what she's doing. She's so thoughtful in writing her patterns in a way that is very easy to follow. And one thing that I noticed about her as I was testing the Brooklyn Raglan is that she wants every size to have as much comfort and for it to be as easy for every size to make her pattern. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. Let me try again. There are some details of the Brooklyn Raglan that needs, like, there's like, it's a texture, it has textured sleeves, it's a raglan increase, and she makes it so that no matter what size you are making, it is easy to follow her pattern. Yeah, I think that's the best I can do. It's very thoughtful. And I remember there were times when I was going through the pattern and I was working it up and I'm like, oh my gosh, that was perfectly worded. Or like, I see what she's doing there. And oh my gosh, that was brilliant. That was really simply put, but amazing. And I appreciate that a lot. I really, really appreciate that. So I'll just give an example without giving details of the pattern away because it's a paid pattern. She gives an instruction and at the end she says something like repeat from here to here. And when I first look at it, I'm like, I don't think that's going to work. I think it's going to mess up because of this and this or the other. But I was proven wrong. I followed exactly what she did. And as I was doing it, I realized this works. This works really well, actually. And Tori knows exactly what she's doing. So that's kind of what I mean by, you know, it's easy to follow. I trust her. It builds a level of respect for the designer as I'm working through her patterns. She has about 25 designs. Is that right? 20 something designs. It varies from like accessories that are super fun all the way to garments that are very wearable and classic. She recently released a tee that's called the Uptown tee, I think, and it's similar to the Brooklyn Raglan in that it is a raglan construction with detailed sleeves and it looks amazing. It looks really cute and I'm pretty sure I want to make one of those this year. And again, I haven't made it, but I trust Tori and I don't hesitate at all to recommend her pattern to you. Let's see, what else? Her garments range in a size from 34 inches to 66 inches. And her patterns are also in a portrait orientation and it is very easy to follow. It's not cluttered at all. Very simple. I don't think her patterns are double, like have two columns. I think it's just in one frame, sort of like you're reading, like when you read a paper or something like that, but it's not overly cluttered. Her prices are about mid-range, I would say about $7, maybe a little bit more if it's a graded pattern, which again, I think makes a lot of sense. She has a free pattern available as well. I think it's called the Soho Scrunchie. If you go into her Ravelry page, the Soho Scrunchie is a free pattern that you can download. When I compare that pattern to her garment patterns, it is very comparable in that I think it'll be a good preview of what you'll get with her garment pattern. So check out her scrunchie pattern. I think it's a great one to try out for the summer. I mean, it just goes in your hair. It's super cute. And if you like that format and you like her style of writing, then absolutely, I would recommend checking out her other designs, especially the Brooklyn Raglan. It's so good. It's so good. Next is Ozetta. Hailey Smedley from Ozetta is another pattern designer that I really adore. She's one that pretty much if she releases a pattern, I know it's going to be good and I know that I can trust the process. I love testing for her. I've tested for her a couple of times with the Miles tee, as well as the Traveler's cardigan and the Seaway pullover. I've also purchased a bunch of her patterns, but most of the makes that I have from Ozetta are the garments that I've tested for her. The tests are so smooth because there are rarely any errors. I can tell that she dedicates, you know, good amount of time to making sure that her patterns are clear. Her patterns are also oriented portrait. I should really figure out how to describe that, but you know what I mean. It's like portrait. It's simple, clean, very clear, minimal, what's the word? Like minimal distractions when it comes to the actual pattern itself. I think her font it's a very readable font, and no extra fluff, unnecessary fluff. She has garments that are graded for sizes between 36 to 65 inches, I think thereabouts. And she has about 56 designs available on Ravelry, so quite a bit. Her patterns though, I think across the board are $6.50 US dollars, which is amazing. So I don't think she differentiates between like her accessory patterns and her graded patterns, which is kind of nice in its own right? Like, yeah, she has like one fixed price for whatever pattern you want to get. And these are quality patterns, so I really appreciate that about her. She definitely provides video support, and they're linked directly into her pattern as well. So I think it's at the very end of her patterns, usually the last page or something like that, she has links available to you. So if you're looking at a PDF version of it, you can just click it on your mobile device and it'll link you directly to the YouTube video, or it'll link you to whatever video she herself have recorded to visually help you with a specific technique. I think that Ozetta has been picking up a lot of speed in terms of popularity lately, and I am really happy for her. She's just a great person to test for, and each time I've interacted with her, she's been nothing but pleasant. So it makes me really happy to support her and to, you know, like promote her on my channel and promote her in, you know, my Instagram, all of that. Yeah, I really don't think that there's anything more to say about her designs. Right now, I've been seeing everywhere her Moonset collection with like the Moonset tee especially, and she has a very bright future ahead of her. Who am I? Am I her aunt? Why am I saying that? But yeah, I just think that, you know, success, like she's already so successful, and I anticipate that it'll just continue that way because her designs are, I don't know, they're just very impeccable. I have a good handful of her patterns that I've purchased myself, even though the 3 that I mentioned today were tests. Side note, it was really important that I promote designers that I didn't just test for, but I've actually purchased myself, like that I've spent money to buy their patterns, because if it's not worth it to me to buy their patterns, why would it be worth it to you to buy their patterns? You know what I mean? Anyway, okay, moving on. Last, but definitely not least, is Petite Knit. And grab a drink or something, because we're gonna sit here for a minute. Petite Knit is a Danish designer? Yes. I don't even know her name. And that's a shame. I just see her face and I think of her, I think her name is Petite Knit. But she is obviously a very popular designer, and I see her patterns everywhere, and really it's for good reason. She does a really good job, and her patterns are very well written. Hers too are very simple and elegant. Her PDFs are very easy to read. She guides you through the process of constructing a garment almost like a tutor would, like they're sitting next to you and they're saying, okay, so you finish this part, next is going to be this part here, and you're going to be doing a rapid increase, or next you're going to be doing the shoulder shaping, or next you're going to be doing whatever. And it's written in such a way that it's so easy to understand, even though the English versions of her patterns, which are the only versions of her patterns I use, are translated from Norwegian? Oh my God, this is a shame. I'm so embarrassed. I don't know. But let me back up a bit and give you a little bit of more like details. So Petite Knit has 246 patterns available on Ravelry. The patterns that I have made from her, it's a long list, is the Rigmore's top, the Stockholm sweater, the Anchor tee, the zipper sweater light, Sophie scarf, Cumulus tee, the Sill slipover, the Northland sweater. And I believe that's all of the ones that I have made. She does not have an open tester pool. I know that she does use testers, but I think it's a closed pool. Like I think she has like her inner circle that does all of her testing for her. I think she also has a team that translates her patterns for her. So it's international. I see patterns, like her patterns everywhere. Like, yeah, no matter what country you're in, if there's a knitter, they probably have heard of Petite Knit. She's an internationally known designer. Her patterns, I think, have developed over time. If you look at her earlier patterns, I don't love them as much as her newer patterns. And not just because of style, but because of like their size range as well as just the construction of the garment. For example, I think in her earlier pattern designs, the bust sizes don't go up to like 65 inches or so. Like even in 2021, there's a pattern that she released and the size range was from like 31 inches to 55 inches. Fast forward to 2022, so just a year ago, I think it's the Ingrid sweater. The size range for the Ingrid sweater just last year was from 30 to 60 inches. So I really want to, you know, praise her for accommodating and adding more sizes to her arsenal in her more recent patterns. It'd be great if she could go back and maybe add some of those extra sizes to the earlier patterns. Just a thought. Another thing that I don't love about Petite Knit is that she has a separate pattern for like all these variations of the same pattern. So if you want to make, I don't know, if you want to make a sweater for your toddler, for example, then you'll have to go and get like the mini size. And that only goes from like newborn to like 10 years or something like that. And then if your 10-year-old, God forbid, grow into like a 12-year-old, then you have to purchase a separate pattern. And then that separate pattern goes from like 10 years old to maybe like an extra small or extra small in adult size to capture, you know, the adolescent years. And then after that, if you want to continue making it or you want to make one for yourself, then you have to find an adult size that goes from like extra small all the way to like a larger size. But then after that, then you have to have the male size or whatever. She has like a his and her size. I guess on one hand, it's nice because it's almost like you can make one of her patterns for anybody. You just have to make sure that you purchase the right pattern. Yeah, I mean, it's a good thing, I guess, but also a not so great thing because you potentially have to purchase 4 different versions of the same pattern in order to make it for people in various stages of their life. Like Tanis, for example. She has one pattern that goes from like newborn all the way to like a grown man. So what's that about? Anyway, the other thing that I don't love is that if you go to like her archive and I'll use the Anchor tee as an example because that's a pattern that I have made. The shaping of it is so weird. And by weird, I mean non-existent. It's beautiful, right? And I like it. And I have a couple of versions of it. But it does not have short row shaping. And that's very puzzling to me. Like, she's such a great designer. Why does it not have short row shaping? Whenever I wear my Anchor tee, it like rides up because that's what happens if you don't have if you don't have short rows, that's what happens. But for whatever reason, some of her earlier garments, and look, let's be fair to her. Maybe it was like the beginning stages of her designing journey and she's allowed to have a learning curve. She's allowed that. So, you know, I'm being a bit of a brat here. But I do think that as she's developed over the years, her shaping has been much better and her garments fit really nicely. And it's, what's the word? Like, it's very wearable, which is why I keep going back to it over and over and over again, which is why everybody keeps going back to her over and over and over again, especially for those classic pieces that you know are going to be timeless, that you're going to wear over and over again. The last thing I'll say about her patterns more recently, or the couple of things that I'll say, is one, I've noticed that there are some mistakes in her patterns, which is not great. Like I mentioned before, I do love the sense that I get whenever I work through one of her designs, that she's a tutor and she's next to me and she's guiding me through the construction of her garment, and that it provides a sense of ease, right? That I trust her. But lately I've noticed that there are some errors, like translation errors, which might not be her fault at all, but I do wish that maybe it could be double and triple checked, or if someone mentions it. I know that she regularly updates her patterns on Ravelry, so if she's doing that, then I would like to see some of these errors corrected. One that comes to mind immediately is that she said, like, to use a US 6, but she also indicated the wrong millimeter size. So as I was making that part of my garment, I realized, oh no, I used the wrong needle size, and then I had to go back and verify in the beginning of the pattern, like, okay, which needle size am I supposed to be using? And then I was kind of confused and I had to go back and forth, and then ultimately I needed to make a decision on what I was going to use. And while sometimes I like that, I wasn't expecting to have to do that. So that was kind of a bummer. The other thing is that I think she updated her website, which includes a video library, but she didn't update her patterns. So the link that is in the pattern doesn't correlate to links that are now in her website's video library. So if you want to learn how to do a particular bind off, for example, and you click on the link, you're going to find an error message because that video no longer exists. Wah, wah. Not all is lost though. I mean, you can always go and like Google it on YouTube, or you can look for it on YouTube. Very Pink Knits probably has an example of that. So it's not the end of the world, but like Ozetta, for example, at the end of her patterns, the video links that she provides, they all work, or at least they do as of today, which is May 2023. But for Petite Knit, I've noticed, like, oh yeah, maybe she's in the process of updating her links, but they don't all work. But all of that to say, look, I really like Petite Knit. I highly recommend her designs to you, and really not just the designs because of her garments being wearable and classic, but because her patterns are so well written, and even with the translation and all of that stuff, it is so nicely written. It's a great pattern. She's a great teacher. So despite the shade, the earlier like faux shade that I was throwing her way, I really am happy for her success. I'm happy that she continues to make patterns. I am going to continue to purchase her patterns because they're great. Oh, I forgot to mention, her patterns are also priced similarly to Ozetta, where it's all like one price. I think it's 45 Danish krones, and I think that translates roughly to about $6 or $7, like US dollars. But anyway, yeah, I hope that you found this to be helpful for you, and I hope that you found it, I don't know, to be educational at the very least. If you have any suggestions for what I should review next, or what kinds of, you know, things that I should vouch for next, please leave a comment below. Let me know what you want to see, because I have been really energized in being able to share all this stuff with you. But okay, until the next time I see you guys, I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you have plenty of knitting time, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye. Baby, you give